Hi, my name is Richard Endacott and I'm an Apogo community expert, and I'm here to talk to you today about recruitment in schools. You as individuals may be going for different areas in school. You may be going for a head teacher role, you may be going for a head of year role, you may be going for a head of faculty or head of department, or even as an NQT and an early stage teacher. Whilst the demands of the interview process itself may differ, and they may be over a morning or over a 2-day period, what we find is that the basic concepts are very, very, very similar. One big advice: if you're applying to a school or an academy or wherever you may be applying, always make sure you go and see that institution first. Now, there's 2 reasons for that. Firstly is that you will get yourself known. You'll start to make relationships with the people who you are looking to work for. When you are applying to a school, it's really important. There's 2 things: that not only you have to remember that they are wanting to recruit you, but also that you should want to work for them. And it's always a 2-way relationship, and you must remember that when applying for a job. Before you make the application, do make sure that you go and see the school before you submit the application. Now, this is very important for 2 reasons. Firstly is that you understand the school and that you get a real feel for the ethos. I know that when I went to visit a school before my recent appointment, that I had a real good sense of the vibe of the school. You know, there was no litter on the grounds. There was the extracurricular activities were happening around the school. There was rowing in one corner, and there was an English Shakespeare play being performed in the other corner of this rather expansive atrium. And I knew from that moment that this is a school which I could feel comfortable with. The other part of that is that during that particular process, I treated that as an interview in itself. So whilst it wasn't part of the interview, actually the way I approached, I did my research into the school, I looked at their Ofsted report, I looked at every single aspect of their website, but also I made sure that I understood that who it was who was employing me and for what reason. So having been able to put a face to the name, I was able to put over a very positive first impression, even before I'd submitted an application. Now, why that's important is that when the application appears on the desk, they may get a number of applications for the post in which you are wanting to apply. But already you have forged that very personal relationship with the people who are employing you, and therefore they have a very good understanding of who you are and where you come from. Now, of course, that doesn't always work. It may be that the first impression that you have given may be something that they are not looking for within their school. Again, that is perfectly acceptable, because of course you're saving yourself time in having to go through the interview process and obviously everything else. So do not get disheartened even after you've visited the school and you've submitted an application that you do not get chosen. That is all part of the process in itself. Now, in terms of fit, having made sure that you've done your research, you've made sure you've visited the school, you've understood exactly what it is that you are applying for, and you are comfortable with wanting to work within that environment, that means that your interview itself would become much more of a conversation between the potential employer and yourself, and less of an interrogation, which obviously interviews some way can be. Now, depending on the level, of course, will depend on the demands of the interview itself. It could be, as I remember back in my NQT days, it could be just a conversation as to whether or not they think that you would fit into the school environment, and whether or not you share their ethos moving forward, in which case that's a fairly straightforward process. You may be asked to teach a lesson. Now, that lesson in itself becomes very, very important, because this is you on show. This is you demonstrating to a potential employer what skills that you can bring to their school. Now, in terms of the lesson, I would always ensure, if I was in your shoes, I would always ensure that you've got as much information about that class that you are teaching as possible. Who are the high achieving kids? Who are the low achieving kids? Where do they sit? What activities can you bring in to demonstrate that you are certainly capable of working within that environment? This goes back to why it's very important to visit the school before you make the application, because you will know, having visited the school, what the makeup of the classroom is, how are the seats arranged, how are the tables arranged, and you will automatically get a good feel as to whether that's the environment that you wish to work in. As you move up the ladder, of course, as you progress your career, the demands of the interview become that much more intense. So in terms of a data exercise, perhaps an inbox exercise, perhaps a student panel, perhaps a governor's interview, depending again on the level, whether it's a head of year role or a head of department role. Maybe it's a head teacher role, in which case it would be a 2-day interview process, perhaps meeting the staff. How that day is framed is entirely up to the school itself that's making that appointment. However, how you approach each of those tasks is going to make a serious impact on your success and whether or not you are going to be appointed for that position. Again, if you've done your homework, if you have done your research, then your chances of success with that application become that much clearer.